You're listening to the Whole Church Podcast. Our efforts to educate and unite the church are made possible thanks to our sponsors on Captivate and on Patreon. You can get bonus content of our show on either of those platforms or on Apple Podcasts with a private subscription to the Amazal Ministries Podcast Network. Hey everybody, welcome to the Whole Church Podcast, possibly your favorite church unity podcast. I am Joshua Noel, one of your co-hosts, here with the one and only, the saint patron of podcasts, TJ, Tiberius Juan, Blackwell. How's it going, TJ?
No, it's going. Thank you.
The patron saint. I said it backwards, didn't I?
You did say it backwards.
Yeah, my bad.
I was going to mention it, but you just kept going.
Fun times. I am excited for this. You guys are about to hear a recording that TJ and I did with Will Rose from Systematic Geekology and The Homily, also on the Amazal Ministry Podcast Network. We're also joined by Nick Polk of Tolkien Pop, formerly of Systematic Geekology, and Ryan Doze of Bifrost, the Mighty Thor podcast, as well as like all the mini past stuff that he does. He has his own network.
Bifrost.
Yeah, across. Yeah, there are words. I know them. I don't. I need outlines for stuff like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ryan's great. Nick's great. Will's great. We have a lot of fun talking about an event we're all going to be at later this year, Theology Beer Camp 2024 in Denver, Colorado, October 17th through 19th. You've heard us mention on the show before. You can use the code WHOLESHIRE, WHOLESHIRE, all one word, to get a discount and to help us go. That'd be pretty nice. Yeah, it'll be a fun time over there. We're just chatting, talking up past things, what we expect to do this year, what we hope to do in future years at the camp. And we even take time in this recording to talk to you guys who maybe aren't big fans of beer or some of the more progressive theology and talk about why we're going to this event as the Whole Church Podcast, that you know, the ecumenical people, and why you guys maybe shouldn't freak out too much about it if you are more on the conservative side. TJ, what else should they know about the recording they're about to jump into?
Man, just bring the vibes. We had them.
Yeah. As Ryan says, just don't be a turd in the punch bowl.
Just don't be a turd in the punch bowl.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go ahead and talk about like history of beer camp. The way when it was here at my church, and then Nick and Joshua went over to my house to let Woody out. Because it was that afternoon, I was like, welcome to my house. And you guys got to meet Woody for the first time. That was special.
It was very special.
Also,
I was very happy.
Yeah. I just want to say, so many first are like wrapped up in like what we're talking about. So also, hey, hats off. If you're listening on the Whole Church Podcast, it occurred to me that this is the first time you've heard Ryan Doze or Nick Polk. And that's wild. So Nick Polk will be back in like 2 weeks. Because I was like, this is not okay. How have we not done a Tolkien episode on the Whole Church Podcast? What is wrong with us?
And we're talking Wesleyan theology, baby.
Yeah, Wesleyan, Tolkien, Mead.
Wow.
I don't know how I'm going to fit Mead in, but you guys can rely on me to talk about me.
I'm ready for it.
Oh man. But like other first, I knew who Ryan was before Theology Beer Camp. That was 2022 when it was at Will's church. And I was so stoked to meet Ryan Doze. And it's so funny because like I feel like this happens a lot in the podcast world where you're like, oh my God, that's Ryan Doze, host of the Mighty Thor podcast. And Ryan's like, dude, I got like 5 listeners. You just happen to be one of them.
I'm glad that one of you was excited to meet me, but cool.
What killed me is I forgot who it was, but there was someone at the first Theology Beer Camp that came up to me and was talking about like our interview with her on the Whole Church Podcast. And I was like, I truly do not remember speaking to this lady. And I felt so bad. I wish I remembered. I still don't
We're just going to put that on the podcast.
Yeah, maybe she'll listen and then criticize me. Hi, TJ.
Come to beer camp. We'll forget about you.
Come to beer camp where people forget about you. That's the first time Joshua looked me in the face to face. We're like, hey, buddy, gave each other a hug. And then he was like, man, your head is rounder than on camera.
Oh, yeah, that's like, the first time I met Will in person.
It was. You're like, man, your head is a lot rounder. I was like, what? All right, Charlie. You're calling me Charlie Brown already, right off the bat? Come on.
Josh
is
was without
great
a
at
single
meeting-
drop of rum.
Josh is great at meeting Peter. TJ, welcome, TJ. TJ is here. TJ
Yeah.
did not come to that first beer camp, but a little bit later on.
He came to the second one, or he came to 2023. I did not make the 2023. This year will be the first time both of us get to be at Theology Beer Camp.
Yeah.
And 2022 was when I met Nick. I actually did not know who Nick was. We were like part of the early group, and I was like by myself, and I was just like, Will's busy because it's his church and everyone's bugging him. I'm like, where is friend? I will meet someone and I will cause them to be my friend somehow. And then here's this bearded fella who's like the nicest person I think I might have ever come across. And he's like, hey, I like Tolkien. And I'm like, want to talk Silmarillion? And I haven't stopped bugging him since.
Dude, it makes me so happy because I also had gotten to the church and Will was like, hey, you can put your stuff, in this room. And then he was doing stuff. And I also was like standing in the corner and also wondering where's friend.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
me
And
and
then
Josh met.
Will was like the perfect matchmaker.
Oh yeah, I think
That's
you might have
appropriate to
introduced
say.
us. I think you might have put us together,
I'm a
Will.
pretty good matchmaker. That's
Like,
the
you
spirit.
both have beards and like Tolkien, right? And we're like, I mean, yeah, but that doesn't
I know.
mean we're friends. Immediate besties.
My spidey sense peaks and stuff goes off, and I'm like, yep, you two should be friends. Well,
Listen, if you find another person who connects with you on Tolkien, Universalist theology, and also is a Swiftie, how much more can you connect?
Yeah, it's pretty hard.
Yeah,
like,
really. I'm surprised our wives let us hang out. Like, I'm surprised they're not more jealous.
They're
Joshua.
probably eager to
I
get
don't
us
know.
out. Sorry, Will keeps trying to interject. Go,
Sorry,
Will.
I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna put
Will.
myself on mute.
We're not trying
there's
to be productive.
there's no outline here for Joshua. There's no telling where this is going to go. The outline
in
key.
case that wasn't super obvious.
Yeah, he brought us all together. He put up the beer camp back signal up in the sky and said, "Let's gather and let's talk about beer camp. Let's talk about what beer camps of past, beer camps of present, and beer camps of future, and how can people get involved? Let people know kind of how they can sign up and all our discount codes, and then what's coming up, and we can reminisce of memories of what we experienced in the past at beer camps, and then what we're excited about for the next one. And let's just say that, yeah, beer camp did not start with us. We talk about our first beer camp or the first beer camp. Tripp Fuller's been doing this for many, many years in the before times, before COVID, before he moved to Scotland. For a decade, he's been doing these gatherings as he is a pastor and youth pastor at heart. It's like those who love theology and beer, and he does a big lock-in or camp and come together, and they have keynotes, and they have karaoke, and they have games, and they have connections, and all the things you would do at like a summer camp, youth summer camp, or whatever. He kind of plays out. It's TrippCon. It's Homebrew Christianity Con. Like if you go to a convention, it's all the people that's been on his podcast in the last years, and then all his listeners from all over the country, all over the world come together and gather at this convention. So Beer Camp is Homebrew Christianity Con. So that's what it's about. Been doing it for a long time. And then we all met together when Tripp moved to Scotland, and then the world changed with COVID and other things. We're all kind of in isolation. And I think his listener base and the theology classes he did online spiked because people were looking for that connection and looking for a way to stay connected and learn and grow and how they understand God and theology and asking the big questions. And certainly COVID time was a time we were all asking big, huge questions. And so he leaned into that and provided a space for that stuff he's already been doing for a long time. But I think he thrived in kind of making connections and being pastoral and the teacher and professor that he is when it comes to theology. So with that wrapped up, he moved back to the States. And he was like, I need to do beer camp. It's time to do it again. Looking for a space that didn't work out for whatever reason. Then he came to me, since he lives about an hour down the road from me. Hey, would your church be able to do this? I said, well, let me think about it for a moment. Okay, I thought about it. Let's do it. It took about 2 seconds for me to do that. And I didn't even ask permission from my church council. I said, hey guys, this is an opportunity. This is what we're doing. This is going to be fun. You're on board? Yes. you still love me as pastor? You want to keep me around? And they were like, sure. So then we did it. And it all worked out. Again, and then that was a space where it was kind of trying to figure out how to do this again, how to be together again, how to be in a building together again and have these conversations. And there were a couple people who were a part of that who are very good at organizing and scheduling and staying on task and creating outlines. And we have Tidyco that are helping out with the beer camp in 2023 and then this year in 2024. So it was cool to kind of be a part of that initial reemergence of Theology Beer Camp and create a cool space for that. But then also understanding that it moves around the country and in different spaces, and it's growing at a larger location in 2023. That also, what's the name of that church again? That was
the venues.
Venues, yeah, such a cool church, such cool people.
They're super cool.
Super great. And then there's going to be in Denver, and the dates for it in Denver, you guys remind me, I don't have it in front of me. It's October
17th through the 19th.
Yeah,
Wow,
even
that's
a
right.
game on the 16th and maybe a day after 20th in Denver, Colorado, and we'll give out our discount codes from our podcast all around. But yeah, that's kind of a summary of where it's been, where it was, and what we look forward to. And man, some of my fondest memories were for when it was here in Theology Beer Camp at Holy Trinity because of meeting you guys for the first time. We knew each other online for a while, but being in person, but then coming back together in 2023 in Missouri was a super blast because then we like lived in the same house together for a couple of days. And man, goodness, we don't want to share all the stories of what unfolded. Yeah. But and we missed Joshua at that time. So now Joshua's coming up at the next one. And so if you meet Joshua in person, now's your chance. You will not be disappointed. And he might throw a Uno reverse card, theology, philosophy, question at you at any moment. So just be prepared.
I do want to ask.
The house board games might be less fun with Josh there. He's really lucky. He's super lucky.
But Josh, you might get to see way too much of Josh Patterson if you come and stay in the same house.
Just walk around the corner.
Just enough.
Listen, after me and Josh Patterson talk Pirates, I just can't wait to hang out with him in person. Like I feel so much. And then I actually got the book. We talked about, so this is on Systematic Geekology. We talked about Pirates of the Caribbean and could Jesus be a pirate in the Caribbean? And then he recommended a book to me, and this is how I forget people. I already forgot the author, and the name of the book is like Mutiny something. Will sent it to me before Josh did.
Sent you first before Josh, and on that podcast, I was listening. You're like, "Yeah, I think someone recommended this book." I was like, "It was me, dude."
So once I get the recommendation twice, I'm like, I have to read it, and then I read it, and then I got Josh to connect me. And actually, on Whole Church, we're going to be interviewing the guy at the end of July who wrote Mutiny, because I just need more excuse to talk about pirates.
Are you going to talk about Mutiny?
Yeah, I love Josh Patterson. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about Mutiny and some of the AI, and does AI pirate creative arts in church? Find out later in July on Whole Church podcast. No, so man, in fact, when did it become Theology Beer Camp and not just Beer Camp? We always say Beer Camp. Y'all ever notice that we always say Beer Camp and then it's technically Theology Beer Camp, but now on like the social medias, Tripp's changed it to just say Theology Camp, and I'm like, I like how even though it says Theology Camp, I don't know who does it. Someone changed it to just say Theology Camp, but we still call it Beer Camp because you know what?
Never seen that.
Drink up, me hearties.
It's code switching. We're code switching the advertisement. Based on the projected audience.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Speaking of projected audience, since this will be on Whole Church, I want to talk some as someone who is more conservative who went. So I think a lot of times you hear Theology Beer Camp and you hear who's going to be speaking, and it is mostly progressive Christians. And then like you hear beer and you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's going to be a lot of drinking. You don't have to drink to go to beer camp. There are a lot of other options other than just alcoholic beverages. There's even AA meetings. But as someone who went, I was really nervous when I first went. I was like, oh my God, there's going to be people who believe all kinds of stuff that I haven't even heard. And I was prepared to be completely overwhelmed. And I even sat in a lecture where someone suggested maybe we need to call God she more often. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. And you know what? I heard her out, and I think she might be right. And there's a lot of stuff that I was like, hey, maybe I'm wrong about. But then there's some stuff that I'm like, I think this is wrong. And I talked to people. I was like, hey, listen, I see it differently. And they're like, cool, let's talk about that. And they were very kind to me. I've never felt more the outsider in any situation in my life. As you know, I'm a white male. I don't really have to feel like the outsider that often. I did in that situation. And I've also never had a group treat me kinder. So it's kind of like, hey, listen, you don't have to be someone who agrees with every theological point of every speaker that's going to be there. You're still going to be treated nicely. You don't have to drink. And I think it's still a worthwhile experience. Like I was challenged. I grew a lot during that. It was a really fun time. TJ, I'm curious, since we didn't get to like experience our first time at Theology Beer Camp together, what was your first time the next year like? Did you feel out of place any, or like, were you like, yeah, no, these are my people?
I was there to do a couple things, help Tripp and drink.
Yeah. You did those things. Yeah. That's fair. All right.
Yeah. I felt right at home.
Well, I want to ask you too, because you said this last year after the Missouri experience at the very end when we had that communion service together. They were intentional about who was serving communion.
I missed a communion service?
Queer
Unreal.
Unity being that those who are serving the bread and wine and having that kind of sacramental experience with those who are on the margins, who Jesus identified with and invite into his space to have meals with. You said a statement of like, I've never felt, or correct me if I'm wrong. Did you say something like, I've never felt more like the church, or the church would never express, or something? You had some phrase of the church or spiritual or sacramental experience that you had there. Can you share about that, what you experienced and shared?
I can share that. What I probably said was that it was the most I've ever felt like a church was supposed to be.
There you go.
Something like that. I don't remember most of what I say. That's why I like it to hang out with people who write down the things that I say.
Yeah.
It's really convenient.
You have Joshua creating outlines of things that you said, which is good. But I think you're right. This is what the church is and what it should be, and it gives a beautiful picture. There was a news article from the Baptist News source. Nick, do you remember who did that? It was Baptist News Today or something
like that. Yeah, so I think it's like one of the most popular Baptist news outlet. And the guy, I guess, attended beer camp
and wrote a glowing review. And was sharing about all that was going on. And then there was one little comment. He said, and there was a Geek Stage, whatever that was. And then he moved on. And I was like, hey, I make that. We got a mention, but I kind of feel the same way. Whatever that was.
That's funny.
And we'll talk about Geek Stage later. But I do think to talk about what it is and is for all people, even if you're not necessarily in the speaker's theological lane or identify everything or agree with everything with that particular speaker or group. People are there who are curious, and it's a safe space for questions and exploring, and a space for those who've been disenfranchised and hurt by the church, but still want to connect with people who ask the big questions around them. And so they listen to these podcasts on their own, whether taking a walk or walking their dog or in the car or taking trips, kind of in their own head. But then at this space, you get to see people in person and hold hands and give hugs and make connections that you never thought you would. So that's what's going on here, like you would at a summer camp, that meet somebody for the first time and then you end up becoming best friends or a partner on their podcast or something like that.
So before we talk about what Geek Stage is, I'm gonna do that. The what do you call it? The Uno reverse card question.
Yes. You are.
I'm gonna put everyone on the spot, including someone who's not here, which I love doing. It's great practice. Everyone should do. Don't do this unless you know someone well enough that you can get away with it. Christian Ashley loves me, and he won't mind me doing this. So Christian, I think everybody here knows Christian or knows of Christian Ashley. He's currently attending a Southern Baptist seminary. Even if he is okay with drinking, he cannot drink while at that seminary because he signed an agreement. Knowing what we know of Christian, do you think someone like Christian should attend? Not that they could, like everyone's welcome, but should they? Like, would he get anything out of it? Like, he can't drink and he's going to disagree with most of the theology. What would the point be?
I think he'd get something out of it, but I don't think he'd enjoy himself.
What do you mean he wouldn't enjoy himself?
Not because of the drinking. Just, I think Christian, he might enjoy it. He might enjoy being the most different person
challenged
in the venue.
Yeah. I thought it was so funny so this was before I came across to Nick's side of the line on universalism. So I still was like, nah, some people just burn them forever. When I first went to Theology Beer Camp, like that's still where I was at. And it was so funny to me that like I met Nathan Gilmore at this camp.
Yes.
And he goes, I'm the most conservative person here. And then proceeds to tell me how he's a universalist. And I'm like, oh man, I don't belong.
Nathan Gilmore needs to make a return.
I love that guy.
Or I don't get why he's not just like a staple in all these Geek Stage things. He's got more cred than all of us. Like maybe excluding Nick. Like dude's
he's got it.
Done the work. Like
it's like he doesn't believe in his own cred. We're calling you out, Nathan Gilmore.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, Joshua. What does that feel like?
He was on a round table at the whole church a couple weeks ago, and then he did share that like he's been teaching a job change and had some medical things going on that kind of kept him out of the loop for a while. So he's been kind of on the low with some things, but he's on the upswing, and it'd be great to get him there. Nick, I want to know your answer about the Christian Ashley thing. You partner with Christian. You've had conversations about fandoms. We probably would stereotypically say there's no way he watches that, enjoys that, but does. And even though he has like definitely, he's not moved by a lot of things, but. I
love that quick little reference. Beautiful. Thank you.
He's not moved by much, but one day I'm going to move him. I'm going to make him move. And they, but what would you take? Like Christian coming, he's a teddy bear. He's gentle. He is about as loving as a person you can get, even though he has his way of believing. What would you say how he would feel or be welcomed at Theology Beer Camp?
Yeah, Christian, I think I've done more podcasts on systematic geekology with him than anybody else. And so me and Christian's actually going to come to Nashville and we're going to hang sometime in August. Cool. And so we've become friends.
I'm jealous.
And, we're That's like all. Very, pretty much on the opposite spectrum of things. I think someone like Christian's a unique individual in that he is firm in his beliefs while also open to conversations, being wrong, and having friendships with people who don't believe the same things he does or are in the same camp ideologically as him. And so I think he would go to Beer Camp, and I think that he would enjoy the friendship, and I think he would enjoy the Geek Stage, no doubt. I think he would I don't think he would like the main stage. I think he would probably be more comfortable in like the open and relational stage, which was smaller and more nerdy, just to challenge him. But I think people who have the same ideas as Christian or in that same camp, if they have the same posture as Christian, I think that they could enjoy friendship and the intellectual challenge. But I don't think most people who go to Southern Baptist seminaries would enjoy themselves.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he can hang out with Joshua, who, they disagree vehemently about The Last Jedi. So I think if they can be friends when it comes to The Last Jedi,
actually,
then they can be. He can be friends with anyone. But Doze, yeah. What you got? What? I think Ryan had a.
I'm probably the person on this call that knows Christian the least because I've only heard him. I've never actually done anything in an official capacity.
What a shame for Christian.
My version of what Nick said so eloquently and flowery and very like ride the line is you can enjoy this event as long as you don't come into it being a complete turd in the punch bowl.
Yes.
Like, have a good time, meet good people. And guess what? You're probably going to have a good time. You might stumble upon something you didn't think previously. It may challenge something that you did, but like, just don't be a turd and you're going to have a great time.
Man.
Yeah. And it's not even about fitting in. Really? There was
No, God, no.
There was a whole one other Pentecostal at Beer Camp 2023.
Same thing in 2022. We got 2 each year. Come on.
Maybe
now
3 of you
you're
can get together this year.
This year,
I
there'll
don't
be
think Aaron's
3.
gonna come.
Oh, man.
I think there might be a 2 limit.
That stinks.
Something might happen to one
Hey.
of us.
Pentecostal.
So I want to, just for a second, to save us work. Because TJ and I sometimes aren't good at our jobs being the host of the Whole Church podcast. So Will, could you tell us why all of the people who follow the Whole Church podcast who are like Calvinist or like grew up Catholic and are freaking out right now shouldn't freak out that we're going to be a part of this? Then let's throw it to Ryan to talk about what the first Geek Stage we did was like and what are all these stages about?
Boy.
Yeah. The growth from the Geek Stage in the youth room at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church to a
The good old days.
a slightly bigger stage in Missouri, and then the next one. Yeah, no, you're the whole church audience. I think if you, again, kind of like Ryan said, but a little bit softer, if you remain curious and open to what God is doing in the world, regardless of your own little world or church, then I think it's a great space. And I think come in being curious about how people experience God and the questions that you have. Be more curious about the questions that people have rather than trying to give people the right answer. And there are people on the stages, main stage and other stages who definitely have written lots of books and feel like they have some good answers to things. But if you explore more about the questions rather than the answers and do that, you're going to have a good time. And there's, and at this place, there's more people that are progressive than conservative, or fundamentalist, but you have all traditions from people who are questioning or atheists or agnostic all the way to like Roman Catholic, to Lutheran, to Methodist, to Church of the Bifrost. You got lots of things like that. So I don't know if that helped answer your question, but I think it is for everyone. And if you come in open and curious, you're going to be fine. And I have no idea what made Ryan laugh at that.
I'm just very glad that people who are watching this video cannot see the private chat. That is all.
Yeah.
I will only tell you that it started with me asking if more Pentecostals could come, if I could bring my own snake. And that's all you need to know about the side conversation, guys.
Just bringing back the days of AOL Instant Messenger, baby.
Oh man,
Wait, I got
Ryan,
mail.
tell us what the Geek Stage is.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, man. The Geek Stage was an idea for people to get together, and like I always felt like maybe the point of the Geek Stage was what if I want to relate to these topics in a different way? Because like I remember the first beer camp I went to was the one we're all kind of talking about as our Genesis moment. I kind of felt like we were truly the nerdy kids. We were the nerdy kids in the lunchroom where it was like, hey, anybody else want to come hang out with us? And then in that youth room on that afternoon, I was like, oh my gosh, there are a bunch of people here that want these other conversations. And then this last year in St. Joe, it was like, we can sustain this because people are willing to relate to these topics on different wavelengths, and we don't have to be the smartest people in the building, but I would say we probably had one of the most enthusiastic rooms. We had one of the most talkative rooms, which I love that because we had scholars and speakers and professors in our room. It wasn't like we were just like arguing about nerdy internet crap the entire time. We were having substantive conversations that relate to both the spiritual, the pop culture. Like it was this beautiful meshing of a lot of different things. And I think through the Geek Stage, we got to actually bring up topics that might have been more accessible to people coming for the first time. Like, I mean, all of you have met my wife. My wife, Kim, has come to the last two beer camps, and she was so incredibly worried that the main stage topics would kind of outkick her coverage. We'll put it that way. She wouldn't be able to hang. She wouldn't be able to swim in those deep waters. And I think the Geek Stage gave her that, like a life preserver to talk about these conversations in just a different way. And it was a beautiful thing. And our room was, I mean, I fell in love with kind of the regulars that we had in our room this last time around. Over the multiple days, we got to see so many familiar faces come through that room, and that was awesome.
Yeah, there was two places I cried. It was in the Geek Stage was where I cried, because I had connected with people, like you said, those returning people who felt more and more comfortable as the days went by to just share, and we invited people to do that. And then, of course, the service, with a communion service led by Flamey Grant. You know, I mean, those are the two places I cried. Yeah,
I can't wait to meet Flamey Grant.
And the first time I met Tripp in person was a mutual Lutheran pastor friend of mine, who actually Daniel Pugh's brothers, best friends with Tripp's brother. They grew up in Raleigh, went to the same high school together. And so Tripp was moving back to North Carolina, and he had this live event. And I was like, cool, I listened to this podcast. I want to meet this guy, or at least go and just sit in the audience and listen to the live thing. Well, it was like a snowy, icy day in North Carolina. When that happens, everybody stops driving. No one goes anywhere. So it was very low attendance. I got to like walk up to Tripp, and Dan was like, hey, dude, I think you and Tripp would get along because you both like Star Wars. And we kind of locked eyes, started talking about Star Wars, and like that stepbrother moment. Did we just become best friends? And so we connected, of course, theology, but also over like Star Wars and geeky things. And then I started sharing some of the stuff I had done in the States and with God Loves Geeks, and working at North Carolina Comic-Con and doing panels about finding God in comics, finding God in pop culture and the culture that pops, trying to find, God and the questions and the philosophical, theological questions that we all wrestle with are often in those stories that we geek out on as well, the fandom. So that spiraled into like eventually Tripp and I having a relationship, talking about that. And then Tripp and I over COVID were able to interview Jason Aaron, famous top tier Mount Rushmore Marvel creators and writers, because we were trying to raise money for local comic stores. And so we started talking about, and Jason Aaron's outspoken atheist, and saying, look, I don't believe in God, but yeah, I'm intrigued by the conversations and the questions that revolve around this. And he was exploring that through his Thor book. Well, we started talking about how Tripp and I were both talking about it was one of our favorite stories of all time, written by an atheist, by two people. One happened to be a pastor, Tripp's ordained, and an academic theologian. And so we had an amazing conversation with Jason Aaron on his podcast on Homebrew Christianity. Well, then Ryan, at some point down the road, months, years, days, I don't know, tagged us in a post that said, hey, you want to listen to a good conversation? Why don't you do this? And I just reached out and said, Ryan, thanks for that. Who are you? What do you do? Let's chat. And then it just snowballed from there. And then from there, the idea was like Tripp and I thinking about what could happen here at Theology Beer Camp when it was here at Holy Trinity, is to have a Geek Stage to talk about Jason Aaron's run on Thor and which gods are worthy or not. Because I kind of said to Jason Aaron, I was like, I think what you did in that book is kind of what Tripp does in his podcast. He's discerning what gods are worthy or not, and what gods you should or not put your faith and trust into. And so that's kind of the genesis of then having a Geek Stage. And then, it was a small, mighty number. We were not the academics or main stage. We didn't have the $1 million or 1,000,000 downloads on our podcast in that little geek room. But, when Diana Butler Bass walks in and talks about she's geeking out on Columbo, we're like, yeah, heck yeah.
That was gnarly.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
We love Columbo.
Yeah, so you're kind of like, everybody geeks out on something, so let's talk about what that is, and then what are the underlying message behind this thing. So that, and then last year was leveled up because we brought some scholars who work in that area, Donna Bowman and others. Her husband, his name's slipping my mind. I just ordered his book on Lost. Noel, yeah, I cannot wait for his book on Lost.
How could you forget Noel? Come on now.
I there's a lot of names. I forgot. This guy down here with the mustache. Oh yeah.
Oh man.
Anyway, I didn't want to step on Ryan, so it would come to Geek Stage, but that's some of the genesis there of how we got here and what we're trying to do. And like the guy in the news article said about whatever that was. I'm like, yeah, we can feel that too, whatever that was. But we're coming together and having some pretty cool, zesty conversations around this
Whatever
things.
that was.
I've been storing up a lot of comments that I got to let go. And I'm sorry.
All right, I'm gonna go to mute and let you run. Cook, baby, cook.
Go off, King.
Okay. So we do systematic geekology. Me, Will, TJ, sometimes Nick, very occasionally Ryan. Unfortunately, he has his own things going on. I understand.
I have an upcoming appearance, though. I have an
upcoming appearance.
Right, Josh? Yeah.
Is it? What? I feel like yes, but I don't remember what it is. My memory is garbage. What is it? What are we doing?
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is what you asked me to do.
What? That's right. I forgot about that. It's going to be so fun. That's going to be so much fun. Okay, sorry.
I learned that he schedules texts in months in advance to be sent to us. So if
that's
you
part
get
of this recording, technically.
Yes.
I have a text that's going out to all of you guys at the end of July that I can't wait for you to get.
Dude, anyway, I learned about that today.
Okay, can I?
From this point on.
The only schedule that Josh manages is mine. Okay? He doesn't have time to worry about his own. He can't remember it.
That's true. Christian earlier today was going to do a podcast with TJ at 4:30, and I told Christian, TJ's busy. Sorry.
It's pretty funny.
It was pretty entertaining. And I'm glad you don't get mad at me because I do just take these liberties. And I'm like, I really think that TJ just forgot and he's okay with me just telling Christian that he's busy.
All right, Joshua, stored up comments.
Stored up comments.
My wife is a very lucky woman.
A lot of this is really just about like what systematic geekology is and how it spun off of the Whole Church podcast. But I think it's worth noting some of the stuff. So Ryan actually, I think, was the one who talked about how like sometimes the geek stuff makes it just more accessible. So what's interesting to me, I'm coming to a point eventually, but let me build to it. We started Systematic Geekology originally. Really, all it was that we wanted to think deeper about this geek stuff. And I, as the person who's like the whole church guy, who's like ecumenical stuff, and hey, can the church actually get along? Even though there's people who think that we should have communion served by queer people, and people who think that queer people shouldn't be in the church. And I'm like, this is hard. This is a hard question. This is what we've been wrestling with for years on the Whole Church podcast. It's like, how do we have church unity when there's so much disagreement? Will comes on, talks about Star Wars. And it's easy. Like, not that it's easy, but it's like, man, it's a lot easier for me to convince someone like Christian. Again, we're just going to keep using Christian as our conservative go-to guy. And Nick to come together and talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer than it is for me to be like, hey guys, what if we just talked about theology and got along because we love Jesus? It's easier to, hey, we love Buffy the Vampire and let's build from there. Cause that's like a low stepping stone. And that was like for me, a lot of it started as like an ecumenical work that systematic theology became. And then it became more about like, let's actually answer the questions these IPs are asking, right? Because a lot of the times, the stuff that we watch, the stuff that we consume, the comics we read aren't trying to preach a message to us. A lot of times they're asking us questions about like, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a hero, to be a villain? Who is worthy of Thor's hammer? Like a lot of the stuff is like questions. So systematic theology kind of evolved from me going, hey, ecumenical work, into more of like, hey, let's answer these questions. Let's actually wrestle with what the IPs are talking about. Not just shove Jesus into it and not just use that as an excuse to get along, but actually address the questions that the pop culture is asking. And then very, very recently, we did an episode on Taylor Swift's newest album. And it was really good. It was a great album. TJ's wrong. Sorry, TJ. But I forgot that TJ has access to the soundboard. We did this episode, and very recently I've been messaging someone who's really close to me, like, hey, I love this album too. And I didn't have words for why it connected with me. And then I listened to what you guys talked about, and now I know. And they're telling me all this stuff about like their personal life and like how this is how it connected to me. And here's where my life is right now. And then that leads into questions about Jesus, questions about God. And we're not trying to do a bait and switch. We don't do this because we're like, hey, at the end, we could tell you about Jesus. No, we're trying to actually answer the questions. And a lot of times, like Taylor Swift stuff is addressing the human condition, specifically usually around relationships, which is something everyone deals with at some point in their life, right? Like, so having these conversations led to something deeper that was more accessible. than just, hey, let me tell you the good news of Jesus Christ on the cross. Rather, hey, let me tell you how Taylor Swift's message spoke to me and what that meant to me as someone who's gone through this stuff with Jesus. I think that kind of bridged this gap and allowed us to have deeper conversations than what we would have been able to have otherwise. So that's like that accessible thing. I think that's what like we're talking about. Like, it's not just going back to like what Ryan said. Like, it's not just, hey, we're having geeky fun. Like, it is that. Honestly, it is that. Sometimes it's just fun to tell everybody you're wrong about She-Hulk. But it's also like more than that, because like we're able to open these doors to conversations of like, hey, wait a minute. We really wouldn't be okay with someone treating Kamala Khan the way that a lot of our politics are treating the Islamic community, right? And how do we address that as Christians? And man, that opens the doors to some really wild and fun conversations I don't think we can get to otherwise.
Which is what Tripp has
rant
been
over.
doing in some of his classes. Like, he'll be adjunct at like Elon or other places, Luther, and he literally teaches like God and pop culture or the apocalyptic genre, not through the lens of like Daniel and Revelation, but we'll use like Walking Dead and Battlestar Galactica and other kind of pop culture fandoms, so that it is more accessible and that it lets people's guards down and they don't feel like they have all their identity attached to something. Although my identity is pretty attached to Star Wars when I think about Star Wars, but or you know, Lord of the Rings, it could be that. It could, like, let's just say it's not all like roses and fun in fandom too. There's a lot of toxic fandom and a lot of gatekeeping when it comes to that kind of stuff too. At Comic-Cons can be pretty clicky just as much as it can any kind of church. And I've learned that walking in those spaces and doing panels and hearing people's conversations and stuff. So yeah, people are going to people, humans are going to human. And so those same things, stuff that we wrestle with in church are happening in other kind of subcultures, pop cultures as well. So anyway, but Tripp was already doing that even before, you know, we started doing it in Systematic Geekology and in Theology Beer Camp. They just kind of merged together and we're doing similar stuff. And so why not kind of join together and do some good work together with that? So wanted to share that aspect of things too. And then Ryan's podcast, the Mighty Thor podcast, I mean, it was spurred like a time in your life where you were doing some deconstructing when it came to your faith and ministry and youth ministry. And Thor came to you in a time when it was helping you think through all those things. And then to be in this space where that deconstruction is happening, Ryan, how does that tie into you, like that, in that space? Yeah, we're the kids at the lunch table may not feel as in or as popular as the podcast next to us, but in terms of our place there, it's still a safe place.
Yeah. So I've said this a few times, maybe on the systematic stuff I've done, and other places where like Thor came to me. I was always a fan of him, like going back to the first movie and beginning of Jason Aaron's run. But when I left megachurch culture, when I failed at being a youth pastor, apparently if you don't hang out with the popular kids at youth group, even when you're the youth pastor, apparently you still don't fit in. So I left and I needed something to latch on to that kind of stirred my spiritual mind, but also helped me kind of break it down to nothing. And I thought it was gonna be so many other like very like philosophical things or deeply spiritual thing. No, it was a comic book that had come out about 10 years prior. And now, thanks to the guidance of one Josh Patterson, who we've already mentioned here, Josh has been teaching me kind of like casually about theopoetics, and I'm really gravitating to something like theopoetics. And I'm of the opinion that Jason Aaron may be one of the best theopoetics writers that I've ever read. To talk about, like, he's an atheist, confirmed, firm in his belief, atheist, who writes about spiritual themes, maybe the best that comics has seen. And that really resonated with me. And when you guys interviewed him a long time ago on Homebrew, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to just, consign myself to like, well, I'm a conservative who believes conservatively. I'm a progressive who believes progressively. What if I don't know? And what if I'm okay with not knowing? What if I don't need to be confirmed in my belief? And that's where, like, Josh is really helping me understand theopoetics and stuff right now. That's been really helpful. But that's something I would not have been able to tell you. I went to 5 years of Bible college and never heard the word theopoetics. And thanks to my connections through Beer Camp, I know about that, and it now resonates with me as someone who's about to turn 34 this year. I feel more spiritually stirred than I have been in the last 20-25 years of my life. So like it doesn't have to be either or. It can be a third option. It can be a different path forward, and I think Beer Camp has helped me discover that path forward. It started with a silly comic book, and now it still involves silly comic books, but I now have a host of friends that help me forward. And that is incredibly valuable and rare, and Beer Camp is a big part of that.
Yeah.
Man, I love Josh Patterson.
Yeah, Josh Patterson's so cool. He's going to be on Whole Church soon, too.
The first time I met Josh Patterson digitally was to talk about beer with drinks with Tejas. And the first time I met him in real life was at Theology Beer Camp.
Anyone who every encounter I've had was beer is a good person. I enjoy that.
You guys share a bunk bed? I think you guys did.
Yeah, we did.
Hey, I want to so first I want to say Ryan's right. That's one of the best comic runs, just period, is Jason Aaron's Thor, and God, it's so good. It's just so freaking good. I didn't have I didn't have as much of a spiritual connection as you did to it, but because of you and Will's conversation on some podcast somewhere, I did read the comic. I'm going to say this twice so that I can bleep it out for Whole Church people. For Whole Church people, I did read the God Explicit comics. I gotta say, an atheist just writing about this time of Cain post the curse before his death, where he just can't die, doing like comic book stuff. Such a fun comic book, and for me, that helped me question inerrancy. That might be a conversation for another day, but I haven't quite turned on the anti-inerrancy. But I am one of those, like, I think I need to stop using the term inerrancy. I am at that point where I'm like, I feel like it's not honest if I keep using the term, even though I am pretty close to holding it. It just doesn't seem honest to say it anymore.
Yeah, you can't be a semi-inerrant.
High view of Scripture, even if
I do have a very high view of Scripture.
That with that word as a part of your own spiritual identity. So you have permission to do both.
But one thing I did want to open the doors into this, because like this is something for me. I wasn't at last year's beer camp, and I got so stinking excited. Like I got like butterflies excited. Like my stomach turned because at the end of beer camp last year, Theology Beer Camp, sorry. TJ sends me a text saying, I think I might want to be a Tolkien scholar. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Oh, no.
Hold up. That for me, I don't know why, that made me so excited that something that happened at Theology Beer Camp, even though I wasn't there, made TJ think, nah, I love this Tolkien stuff. So TJ, first tell me about like what inspired you to send me that text, and then Nick, talk Tolkien for a bit.
It wasn't a scheduled,
and then I'm probably going to have to leave.
Right?
No, it was really. So, is anyone familiar with the theoretical center of the universe? Supermassive black hole. Yeah. So that is basically Nick, and just being around Nick for so many days straight, and realizing, like getting back into talking about Tolkien, I was like, man, I want to be like this guy so much.
That's fair.
Nick's gravitational pull was just overwhelming.
I got long-term sidetracked, which is on me. But
I know I'm still waiting for that writing, dude. I want to read it. I want to hear your thoughts on Tolkien, dude.
I just love Valorant.
Same. Oh, hey, this is so random. I left this out of my rant earlier, so I'm going to add it in here. So C.S. Lewis. Listen, we mentioned Tolkien. It reminded me of C.S. Lewis.
Jesus.
C.S. Lewis writes, and this is something I really enjoy. He talks about like the power of imagination. He says a lot of times before we can change our beliefs, it really isn't like us reasoning our way. It's more like reasoning stands guard and doesn't let new ideas in. But your imagination can kind of sneak past that guard and allow you to explore new ideas. So that's something that Lewis writes that I think is really interesting, because he talks about the power of story being greater than just the power of reasoning. which is a lot of fun. Also is why I think our fandoms can actually let us do a little bit more than just simple theology sometimes. Okay, Nick, tell us about Tolkien. Just go.
Sorry. You what you said was really beautiful, Josh, and I'm being a 5-year-old on the private chat.
Nick, you freaking kill me, man.
And I'm literally just doing it to see Ryan laugh. That's all I'm doing.
Oh gosh.
So, but I agree with Josh about what C.S. Lewis said, and I think that, you know, connecting it to Tolkien here is that Tolkien and the Inklings were kind of like an early version of systematic geekology, if you will. Is that, you know, C.S. Lewis was an atheist first, and Tolkien, you know, was a very staunch Roman Catholic, but they loved Old Norse mythology, classical literature, etc., and writing stories, which led to C.S. Lewis converting to a sort of like evangelical Anglicanism or something. So anyway, or you know, Tolkien or something like that, you know, who knows? You can't, it's hard to categorize people, but I think with what I hear from people's experiences with Ryan and TJ and Josh, in particular, just talking about getting connected to people at Theology Beer Camp and finding this space within our respective, you know, podcast specialties to explore things without shoehorning Christianity or certain ideals into these things, but to allow like the wholeness of our diverse experience come together and inform who we are, and our friendships, and finding people who will like be like, yeah, I am super tangled and don't know what's going on, and am trying to figure it out and have a good time with the people that I love and care about. And other people being like, yeah, same. And I think that's part of why I love Tolkien and have connected this to theology and even done stuff with Tripp and tried to take some of my own theological experience and bring it into Tolkien, is because Tolkien's world is like that, right? You know, C.S. Lewis, there's a little bit of a Jesus lion in there, a little more complex than that. But Tolkien kind of says, yeah, I'm Catholic and my world's Catholic, but you don't need to be a Catholic to enjoy it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of similar how Middle Earth can be a playground for creatives. I think Beer Camp and our podcasts and our friendships can be a sandbox for all of us and what we're doing. So
and
Well
Tripp is like one of the sacred texts that he reads to his kids and help guides his life and rereads. He didn't have a lot of time to read a lot of fiction or sci-fi, or even, you know, he reads some comics and stuff, but like Lord of the Rings is what he reads and studies and dives into to help. It's a narrative that's important to him. So, and Nick, you saying that systematic geekology is just another version of the Inklings, that's kind of what they are doing, just warmed my heart that I'm in like the same I never made that connection before. You're right. They gather around a table and they're geeking out on these things they geek out on, and it's having impact on how they posture themselves in the world and the stories they tell and the stories they write and how they interact with their students. And this is the same way that I do with my ministry and campus ministry students, my friends. So yeah, this is my geekology, just a postmodern Inklings.
Oh yeah.
I do have. I have something I'd like to reveal to the world. Secretly, though. Secretly.
So this isn't very secret platform, TJ.
Yeah, but like Tripp's probably not going to listen to this exact part, so I'm going to tell everyone our secret plan.
Yes.
Eat those words.
Okay.
Eat those words.
So, secretly, all of us geek stagers have been getting super swole. I hope everyone has kept up with their gym routine for the past year. Yeah, Nick has.
Oh, put those away, Nick. Put those away.
So the secret is we're gonna get so large that even though we're getting a bigger stage, the stage is gonna look smaller. So 2025, we're gonna have an even bigger stage.
What is this? A stage for ants?
We're gonna have a stage of like bodybuilders doing like lifting things.
Bodybuilder geeks.
Saying the bodybuilders, we're gonna break bricks. Oh man, and lift wood.
We're gonna walk through the Geek Stage. You're gonna think we went to
the power team in 2 years.
We're gonna be power team in 2 years. That's what you're saying, TJ. We're gonna be the power team.
Perfect. Perfect.
Nobody's going to
Hey,
call
guys,
us. Yeah, go
as
ahead.
the designated outliner and party pooper, I know we need to start bringing this in for a landing.
We do.
So I want to hear from you guys before we wrap this up and do our outros, plural. What do we expect for Theology Beer Camp's Geek Stage in 2024? And what do we hope for in the future other than us all just getting really swole, apparently?
Tears.
Yeah.
What? Elaborate.
No.
Yeah, unpack that, TJ. Unpack. No.
Okay.
That could be
Someone unpack it for him. Someone guess what TJ means by tears.
The tears
Is it going to be tear gas? Is it like a political event?
Oh my God. Oh, Josh.
It could happen. Who knows what's going to happen a year from now? But it's before November, so we at least have before the election. But I will say, it runs the gambit of the human experience from emotion, head, heart, soul, your mind, your feelings. You don't have to check your brain at the door. You don't have to check your heart at the door. Like, all those things come together, and that's exactly what it is. You can bring all every organ you have, Ryan, you can bring to systematic.
Dang it. I thought you didn't see that.
No.
Oh,
This is going on
sorry,
YouTube, Ryan. What do you mean?
Sorry.
It's emotional. It's also stimulates your mind and what you're thinking. So all that comes together. And yes, there's like, this is the best of homebrew Christianity, kind of the people who's been on his it's like, when a band goes on tour, Foo Fighters goes on tour, they're going to play some of their new stuff, but they're always going to play their classics. And so you're going to hear Tripp say some of the same phrases he says on his podcast live in person, but you're also going to have some new guests or people that he met over the last year. And some of the new guests, like, or people who haven't seen it at Theology Beer Camp, Catherine Keller, Ilio Dilio, man, she's a powerhouse when it comes to faith and science and how they come together. They're part of the process party, but in terms of and she's Catholic, and an evolving universe can apply to love of Jesus and a triune God. Heck yeah, baby, that's what I'm there for.
I know this is weird, but like, more than the theology, more than like the big church stuff, or even the Geek Stage, what I'm looking forward to this year and in future years are those moments, to call back like Will and TJ's conversation earlier, where it really feels like church for real, like where the marginalized are the ones who are actually administering, the sacrament, or like where, like, for me, I don't know why, like a big church moment for me was when Ryan looked at me after I told him about this version of D&D that I invented and said, that might be the nerdiest thing anyone has ever said.
And no one has topped it yet.
Post-common era is the nerdiest thing ever created.
That was...
We should do an episode about that for the SG one day.
I will
specifically.
Not miss it. I refuse to not be on that episode, because that was
interview
some
me
of
about the post-common era.
Listener, no matter how you're listening to this, when I say it was the nerdiest thing, like, I've been around these conversations for a long time, and I was stunned at the level of detail and intensity Joshua was talking about. And I got done with the conversation, and I'll be honest, I had no freaking idea what he was talking about. None. I leave it, and I was like, well, that was a lot, and I don't really know what to do with it yet, which is like most nerdy conversations, but it was on a next level.
That's a teaser for future SG stuff.
What?
Even just like
crazy
meeting Nick, and for me, just like all the little moments of like truly connecting with other humans that maybe I don't always agree with. That's what church is, and for me, that's what I'm most excited about this year and going forward. Sorry, TJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Ryan?
Yes.
It gets worse.
I see. I would view it as it gets better, because Joshua is one of my favorites.
You should meet our friend. I don't know if he's okay with saying his name publicly, but
oh yeah,
the three of us
should probably not.
You should hear us talk.
You can come to Theology Beer Camp and see how round my head is.
Yeah, me, TJ, and our other best friend definitely had really in-depth conversation about the science of not existing. Yeah.
Wow.
Will's head is
that sounds like it
exuberantly
needs
round.
to be medicated and
That's
reported to a therapist.
It was.
One
Anyone
thing
else?
I'll say that I'm excited about for this beer camp, and just like land the plane here, Joshua, like I love how this has really formed like a weird brotherhood in our hosts, because like
The fellowship
we are
of the
legitimately
pods.
all there to facilitate a conversation that, you know, there's people at the open and relational stage. They can facilitate that conversation because it's their area of passion and expertise. And this is a conversation we can facilitate because it's an area of our, you know, our various expertises and our passion. So it's easy for us to connect with people on these things because it just like, we don't have to summon it up. We don't have to act like it. It just is who we are. And so if you come to the Beer Camp Geek Stage, you're going to see that on full display. You know, you're going to see people like Craig Boyd, who just did story time. He read he read a portion from I believe it was Return of the King that was just
So good.
impactful. It was incredible. Donna Bowman knows more about how to read pop culture than anybody listening to this. She's forgotten more about pop culture than a lot of people know. So
Yeah.
that's the level that we're dealing with, and we get to come together in this weird brotherhood. And then there's Will standing there like he's leading the oldest and weirdest youth group ever, you know, with the four of us. And we're just
Perfect.
like, yeah, Pastor, I know we said that weird thing. And we
Youth
probably-
Pastor Heart. That's where I started, baby. I'm
Oh,
always
man.
will be.
But, Will, do you ever feel like that when like all of us get together? It's just like,
Super.
man, flexing my youth group muscles, just listening to this
Right.
weird.
When I was youth pastor down in
garbage.
Florida, like Josh Patterson was down at Abbott, you guys were all you 30-something kids would have been in my youth group. So that's all.
Man.
Now, see,
See,
that would
I-
have been cool.
I would have been driving that bus, yelling at y'all to
Man,
shut up.
We should
Or
take a
laugh.
bus
Hey,
to
okay.
Colorado.
that's true. No, I want to let Nick have the final word, but before I
Ooh.
do, I have to have the pre-ultimate final word.
Penultimate.
Thank you. I think what's interesting that Ryan made me think of, and this is not like a flex or anything. I think you should attend all stages if you go to Theology Beer Camp 2024 in Denver, Colorado. But a lot of your other stages, a lot of other even times that I've had to speak, you already know what you're going to say. You know where the conversation is going to go. You know what you want it to be
Yeah.
about. A lot of the times at Geek Stage, we have no earthly idea where the conversation is going to go. We're there to just see what happens. And we're just kind of facilitating and letting whatever happens happen. All right, Nick, final words. What are you excited for this year and the years to come? Go.
I'm just excited for more friends, more conversations. You know, one of the things that our stages has a unique privilege in doing is facilitating those conversations, not just with our, our keynote speakers, like Craig Boyd and Travis, who did Star Wars, and James McGrath. And
Awesome talk.
but just
Oh, James.
great stuff. But just even passing the microphone to the crowd, and because we're not dealing with sensitive subjects like did Jesus really raise from the dead historically, people don't get as pissed off. And so we can share the microphone, and I'm a big punk rock guy, and getting people involved in the process of creating and enjoying stuff. Like we got to do that. And I'm excited for just seeing how that evolves through our different plans. And I'm very excited for that. And even just, and also staying in a house with everyone again will just be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
boy.
the behind the stage
Well,
stuff.
Nate,
We're going to have a good time.
There's only one thing. There's one thing that I need out of Denver Beer Camp. And it's, I need the ping pong table to be better.
I thought he was just going to say we.
Yeah.
No, I need a better ping pong table with more room. That's all.
All right. That's
Does TJ really need
I
more
prefer that need. He does need more room for his ping pong skills. If you're there in person, you can see it. We will not be videoing it for the YouTube page. You have to go in person to see TJ play ping pong and possibly lose to him if you'd like.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that was our recording. We hope you enjoyed it. I know we just kind of goofed off, had a lot of fun. We love talking to those guys. Can't wait to see them in person and hang out. I'm hoping that TJ will just pick an outline that we just did for another recording, and he's going to read it off and let you guys know what shows are coming up and where you can support our show. Before he does that, remember, if you want to get a discount and to help us get to Denver, Colorado, October 17th through 19th for Theology Beer Camp 2024, you can use the code WHOLESHIRE, WHOLESHIRE, to do that.
Yeah, and we hope you enjoyed it. We are going to have on Lauren Richmond Jr. in 2 weeks. I think we're a week removed from this outline I'm reading.
Yeah. Leslie Schoenfeld. That's who you're going to hear next.
Next week, we're going to have Leslie Schoenfeld. The week after that, we're going to have Lauren Richmond Jr. on to discuss the space for center-left theology in the American church today, which kind of ties into Theology Beer Camp, as well. Then after that, we're going to have on Nick Polk of the Tolkien Society. He is the production editor for their scholarly journal, which is called The Malorn, for all you Tolkien nerds out there. Also, contributor or editor of the Wesleyan Theological Society's journal. It just depends. And then we're going to have Josh Patterson on. You heard us talk about him a lot just now. And we're going to talk about the differing thoughts on the nature of salvation and some stuff about Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Yeah. Cool guy.
And then at the end of season 1, Francis Chan's going to be on the show, obviously. You all know he's coming. He knows.
Yeah. Hopefully, I do feel like he's more likely to show up on our show than he is to show up at Theology Beer Camp, personally.
I do agree.
Yeah. So keep checking here for that, and go to Theology Beer Camp to see us hang out with people like Tripp Fuller, Dan Koch, James McGrath. Who are some of the other cool people going, TJ? Josh Patterson.
Josh Noel.
Thomas Ord.
Every other cool person you can even think of.
Pete Enns.
I think Patrick Swayze is going to be there.
Jesus
Christ.
Yeah, hang out there with us. We look forward to Francis Chan being on the show and to seeing you guys at Theology Beer Camp. Thank you for listening to the Whole Church Podcast. Again, you could always sponsor our show at patreon.com/the Whole Church Podcast, or on captivate.fm, or on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave us a one-time tip through Captivate. Thank you for listening.